So, thank you for joining me today to talk about this really important topic, beyond weight loss, reversing prediabetes. So, first, I want to give a disclaimer. I am a physician, but I am not your physician. And this webinar really is for educational purposes only. It's not really intended to diagnose, treat, or replace medical care. It's really important to consult with your, primary care provider about your specific situation. So you're in the right place if you have prediabetes or diabetes and you want lasting change. Maybe you want to avoid or reduce medications if it's appropriate. Maybe you're tired of weight-centered advice that isn't actually helping. And maybe you're looking for a plan that supports your whole health, not just one aspect of it, because we are whole human beings. So this session is really more about just managing symptoms. It's about really protecting your health and your joy. So often, women that come to me, that I work with have been frustrated. And a lot of the things I hear again and again and again is, sometimes they've been told year after year after year to just lose weight and everything will get better. And it can be very frustrating not to be able to achieve those goals, but also, that everything is attributed to weight. Sometimes they feel like, this is the only option is more medication year after year after year. They keep ending up on more. Or maybe they've been told many times that they can't eat foods that they grew up with or that are part of their heritage, things like plantains or rice or fufu or, any number of things have been, we've told people in the past to eliminate. As a physician, I myself have been guilty of that, when I first learned about managing diabetes. And sometimes it's, going through midlife, things that we've done before stop working. And it just sometimes feels like, they're trying really hard and they feel like their body's just not cooperating anymore. And, I'd like to just put that out there that it's not you. It is the framework that you've been given. And there's definitely a different path. So what I'm going to talk about today is why weight-centered approaches often fall short. What actually is underlying blood sugar dysregulation? And the lifestyle levers that actually make a change. They change insulin sensitivity and improve how our body responds to energy. Why stress and nervous system load actually do matter. And my method, the joyful medicine method, which is a path to sustainable change. I'll talk about that at the end. So this workshop may not be for you though, if you're looking for something that's going to be a quick fix, because the things I'm talking about are lifestyle. While they last, they're sustainable, they do take time to take effect. Maybe you're not open to a new framework. Maybe, the framework I'm talking about is very different, than it's typically put out there. Although it's well documented in the literature, it's just a different way than a different approach. Maybe you're not ready for small, consistent steps, and that's okay. We're not always ready for change, but that's what this is about. So this session is really for those who are ready to shift from surviving to thriving with joy. I always like to include joy. So who am I? I'm Jennifer Davis. I am a physician. I am triple board certified in pediatrics, pediatric medical care, and lifestyle medicine. And I'm also certified in plant-based nutrition. I love to cook. I love to eat. And I totally believe in the power of food as medicine. And along those lines, because I like to cook and eat, I felt it was really important to be able to help my patients, do that and support their health at the same time. So I also became certified in culinary coaching. I've been in practice for more than 25 years, mostly taking care of children in the ICU, but the last 5 or so years, I've been focused on helping people reverse disease, prevent disease using lifestyle medicine, culinary coaching, and food as medicine. So why did I shift this way? So as an ICU doctor, I was finding that more and more young children were actually showing up with adult things we used to call adult diseases, things like hypertension, obesity, type 2 diabetes. And these things were actually affecting their ICU stays. It was, resulting in longer stays. And, these are all lifestyle related diseases, but when you're giving lifestyle coaching in children, you're really coaching the whole family. So I found I was doing that more and more. And I really realize that really sustainable change is based on the family making a change, doing it together. And really women, we drive so much. We take on so much burden, but also we control so much of our family's health and our children's health and our grandchildren's health and, on and on, the people around us as well. It creates a ripple effect. When we're healthier, we can create a ripple effect around us. So the things I discovered, lifestyle medicine is evidence-based. There are so many years, decades hundreds of years of data demonstrating that lifestyle medicine is effective and it can be used, like I said, to reverse disease, treat disease, and such. But sometimes the way that we apply it can be really hard to sustain. And I was finding that though I was so excited about all these new tools, sometimes people were just not, it didn't fit their life. And it felt like it removed some of their power. And I feel the opposite. I feel that it should be power. Lifestyle is life and it should be lived. And like I mentioned before, I love to cook. I believe that food should nourish, but also bring pleasure. And then when you look at the areas around the world, like the blue zones, the areas that were studied, but there's many areas around the world and communities around the world where they have lasting wellness, and it's not based on rigid rules. It's really based on embracing living, embracing joy, embracing pleasure and flavor and community, and all of these things are really important. So how we can meld these things together so that it becomes sustainable and enjoyable and actually makes lasting change. The thing about cultural foods, that's really an important thing. I found that many times these cultural foods that in the past I even told people to eliminate actually can be part of a healthy diet. And some of those foods are more healthy than the foods that we typically recommend here in America. So, and the other big thing is that often in medicine, unfortunately, women and people of color are left out of the discussion. So many of the studies are done on men. And diverse body sizes are judged instead of respecting, which is the crux of this discussion today, is that so much is based on how the size or weight of our bodies when that's not actually the underlying cause. And so I realized that lasting change actually happens when science embraces joy, culture, and inclusivity. And that's where the power is. So my perspective is food is medicine. As I mentioned, joy is absolutely essential. And coaching is what makes it sustainable. Often I've had people come to me and say, "Oh, well, my doctor said to, do this." But how do you implement it? And that's a big thing. How do you make it fit into your life? How do you make these changes? And that is where coaching, the medical coaching model comes in. So healing is biology plus lived experience. So let's talk about this weight. So the real problem isn't weight. Study after study, we distill it down to weight. But when you look at the actual study, it's not the weight that's the problem. Your weight can change, but blood sugar can still worsen. Many people lose weight, regain it, and then blame themselves. And weight cycling actually is common. When we focus on dieting and weight as a goal, what happens is we might lose weight in the short term, but then we gain it back. And then, unfortunately, many times we gain back more weight. And not only that, that regain ends up being visceral fat, which we'll talk about later, and more metabolically active, and it actually worsens metabolic health over time. So the scale is not enough to tell us what's happening in our bodies, right? What's happening in the liver, in the muscle, what's happening with insulin signaling. This is much more than just a number on a scale. So when we focus on weight as the target, we're often missing the underlying cause that's driving disease. So the real issue is that we're treating the wrong target. So again, when we chase weight, we're missing this mechanism. Prediabetes is a metabolic signaling problem, right? It's not a weight problem. The drivers are actually the food that we eat, the food quality, it's sleep, and it's stress, and it's physiology, and it's movement, and it's the environment that we live in and the environment we create ourselves. And when those change, labs change. So when we can address these underlying issues, we will see a change in the labs, we'll see a change in insulin sensitivity, and then eventually, actually, weight does change, but it's the target. So insulin resistance, sometimes it may present in many different ways. So some of the things that you may see are fatigue after meals because that insulin isn't helping the energy get to where it needs to be. You might see an elevated blood sugar or A1C, cravings and hunger dysregulation because again, that energy isn't getting to our brains where it needs to be. And so we're hungry, our brain is trying to save us. So that's the mechanism. And unexplained weight gain because we're not using energy. So these are common, even if somebody looks healthy on paper. Sometimes, you know, uh, the numbers are all right, but people still have insulin resistance. So this is really an important distinguisher here. So what does insulin do in the body? It's really more than blood sugar. It's a master signaler. It controls so many things, and it combines effects with different things. But the main thing that we think about it is it moves glucose from the bloodstream into the cells for energy, right? It also signals the body to store fuel. When we have excess energy, we have to store it somewhere. So, especially as if insulin levels stay high, which we'll talk about, that signals more storage of fat and other things. So it also regulates fat storage and fat breakdown. It affects muscle building as well and protein synthesis. And it also impacts our brain. It causes signaling, hunger, and cravings, as I mentioned before. So when insulin stays high, which happens when you're insulin resistant, the body changes how it functions. So why do we develop insulin resistance? So it is intracellular fat. So fat gets inside of the muscle and liver cells, and that interferes with the signaling, and it interferes with insulin working properly. Cells stop responding to insulin's normal signal, and the body compensates by making more insulin, right? Because unfortunately, if the energy is not able to get into the cell, again, the body's always trying to rebalance things, and when it realizes the energy isn't getting there, it tries to help us by providing more insulin because it's trying to override that resistance. And over time, blood sugar rises anyway. And then eventually these other things, these other insulin effects happen. Fat storage shifts toward the abdomen or visceral, around the visceral organs. It increases cravings and energy can worsen and sleep can worsen. And this is all effects of high insulin resistance. And this is adaptive biology, right? It's not a character flaw. This is what's happening in our body, and our body is trying to compensate. It's not our fault. It's just, what is happening. So what drives this insulin resistance or diabetes risk? So insulin resistance drives diabetes risk. Visceral fat is what the problem is. So the visceral fat is the fat that collects in the body around the organs. Things that can affect this are poor sleep and dysregulated circadian rhythm, chronic stress, which is really important to talk about, nervous system overload, ultra-processed foods, low fiber, and low muscle activity. So when our muscles aren't working properly, we take less glucose up, and then this again exacerbates the problem. So this is a really important one. There was a recent article about stress and the chronic effects, especially in the Black community, but even actually there was another study that showed in female physicians. Chronic stress has a real clinical consequence, right? So chronic stress can raise blood sugar, it can worsen insulin resistance, and it can increase inflammation, which also causes this momentum of worsening metabolic function over time. And when our nervous system is overloaded, the body prioritizes survival, not balance, because I always say that our body doesn't know the difference between, chronically being, notified on your phone and being chased by a bear. It responds the same way. It's preserving our energy and our needs so that we can fight that bear. And so sometimes it may be something seemingly minor, but our body is responding that way. So this is a really important thing to remember is that chronic stress, when we don't reset, we don't address it, this really has a real negative effect. So insulin resistance affects way more than blood sugar regulation. It also affects our brain health. It increases our risk for Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. It affects our heart health. It affects our hormones and makes menopause and perimenopause worse. It can worsen PCOS. It can affect our mood. And so when we fix insulin resistance, when we really address this underlying cause, as opposed to just, again, focusing on weight, we really are doing much more for our health in the long run. So I want to reiterate that not all fat is the same. That's kind of how I started this is because, we talking about the scale all the time, but when we talk about fat, there's two different kinds of fat. So as I mentioned, visceral fat is important. Visceral fat is what's around the organs, and that is what causes inflammation, and it really is strongly linked to insulin resistance. Whereas subcutaneous fat, which is peripheral fat, the rest of our body, which we all have, fat is normal, is actually neutral or even protective in some cases. We're finding that when people that have extra fat, have preserved bone, and have other, longevity, actually, believe it or not. So obviously there's extremes on either end, but it's just something to keep in mind that it's not just the size, it's not just weight, it's much more complex than that. And it's visceral fat that we really need to target. And so two people can weigh the same and have very different risks. And this is another important thing where we have many cultures actually that have problems with preferentially accumulating visceral fat. So they may be thin by standards, but actually have high visceral fat. And this opposite is also true. Somebody that we may say by standards is, elevated BMI, but may not have any visceral fat or have minimal visceral fat. So this is really important. So visceral fat is not random or accidental. It is, again, some bodies are genetically disposed to accumulate visceral fat preferentially, and this is really important. It's an adaptive response to stress and perceived threat. And historically, the body stored fat to protect itself against periods of low food availability. So this is, again, an adaptive response. In modern life, this same survival response can be chronically activated with stress. This is, again, why stress is important. So it's not what you eat, it's what your body is responding to. So some triggers that can activate visceral fat storage are, high intake of ultra-processed foods. So if our diet is highly consists of ultra-processed foods, these foods are low in fiber, they repeatedly spike our insulin, and then eventually this can increase visceral fat storage and then set us up for developing insulin resistance, diabetes, prediabetes. Chronic stress, as I mentioned before, nervous system overload, poor or disrupted sleep, which is another stress, but also many other healing processes happen when we sleep. So if we are not sleeping properly, this over time, our body keeps score, and this can, again, activate more visceral fat storage. Sedentary lifestyle. This is really important because, with all of our technology, I do so many things on my computer myself. We're sitting more, not moving enough. And this is another big risk factor. Alcohol and other environmental toxins like endocrine disruptors can really, we're seeing more and more effect related to this. Hormonal changes when we go through perimenopause and menopause, the way that we use energy changes, and our accumulation of visceral fat can increasing our risk for insulin resistance and diabetes. And part of that, again, is with the hormone changes, our body's trying to compensate by producing estrogen peripherally. And because of that, we have increased fat storage. And in some cases, it's more visceral fat. And that is a real issue as well. Social stress is another stressor, and disconnection. This stress can increase inflammation. It can increase visceral fat storage. It has other effects as well. So when we can address these underlying signals, we can change the metabolic trajectory. So that's a lot, I know, but it's important, I think, always to understand. I always find that sometimes, many times when people come to me, they don't understand what's going on, and they're really surprised to hear the terms insulin resistance. I don't know if this is something that you've heard before, or if it's been explained to you this way, but I think it's important to understand why my approach is different and why I really focus on, helping address this underlying insulin resistance in a different way, because recognizing that nervous system control, these are really important. So the reframe that we're talking about that changes everything is that you don't need more discipline. We need to target the right things and provide the right support for our body to heal. When we lean into support, we move from exhaustion to resilience and from surviving to thriving. Our body, again, is always trying to heal. And if we can support our body properly, our full body, mind included, we can really move towards healing sustainably. So I want to talk about a few myths that come up again and again, and it's part of being stuck in this cycle. So 3 big ones, there's many, but the 3 ones that I'm going to address today are health is just about numbers. And I will say again that as healthcare providers, as physicians, we are really stuck in numbers. And I can understand it's important to understand the numbers, but to drive everything by numbers is not necessarily the best route. The other one is we just need more willpower, more discipline. That's where the problem is, right? Or if it's moving slowly, it's failing. So let's dive into these. So the first one is health is about perfecting the numbers. It is amazing. We have so much technology available. We can track every single thing. But I don't know that it's always the best because we get stuck in managing numbers rather than dealing with us, the human part of it, right? So we've been told to track weight, calories, carbs, protein, fat, right? These are really important things to know. Steps. But you know what? Numbers don't capture all of these things I mentioned: stress, sleep, cravings, insulin signaling. These things are not measured by numbers. And even if they are, some things we're getting more measurements by. I don't know that necessarily moving towards more numbers as opposed to listening to ourselves and our own bodies and learning how to listen again is not equally as important, or maybe more important in some cases. So the truth is humans are not machines. We're complex beings. Metabolic health improves when we support food quality and fiber, sleep and rhythm, movement and muscle, stress regulation and connection. And we have a mindset, which is really important because our brain is connected to our body. So when our mind is embracing progress over perfection, it makes the biggest difference. So a mindset built for real life. The other myth is I just need more willpower. And I know when many women come to my program, they just feel so guilty and so much shame because they haven't been able to follow, a rigid program or the things that have been prescribed or recommended. And the problem is a lot of times we move to all or nothing thinking that there's only one way to do something, or that, we can't have whatever it is ever. And I think that all or nothing thinking is not beneficial because as human beings living in this life and experiencing it with all of our symptoms, senses, we're going to run into things that don't fit into the protocol. So always being open to and being able to be flexible and resilient to the things that are happening around us is really important. Being on or off a plan, because often we put off doing something because we're like, oh, I'll do it after vacation. I'll do it after whatever because it has to be so perfect. But really, life, again, is not about perfection. It's about really embracing everything. So also feeling like you failed when life happens. When it's not working, people assume that they're failing. So a different way to look at it is um, when we are always worried and stressed about maintaining this rigidity, it actually can worsen stress hormones. It can elevate our blood sugar. It can worsen our sleep, which can also affect our insulin sensitivity. And this try harder, just push harder, push through it, actually can backfire because our systems can be overloaded, and it really can, again, work against us instead of for us. So healing requires support, not force. And that's really, again, I always say that our body just needs support so that it can heal. And so whatever we can do to help support our body and make it feel safe so that it actually is open to healing. And this one is really important as well. I always think that this is, another thing that we miss in medicine because we're always looking at the end point, right? And if we don't get to the end point fast enough, then clearly it didn't work. So if it's not fast, it isn't working. And this leads us to be impatient and also frustrated, right? If we're not seeing those numbers change, then we're frustrated and we're less likely to continue because we think it's not working, and we feel like we're doing all this work for nothing. It also leaves us chasing quick fixes or hacks, and starting or stopping when the results aren't immediate, which leads to this weight cycling and these other problems that we see down the line. And so judging our progress by speed is detrimental instead of judging it by what's actually changing underneath, which you may not see right away. So healing does take time. We are animals. We are living in nature. Nature takes time. I love this quote by Lao Tzu. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. When you think about a flower blooming, right? Growing in the soil and sprouting and leaves and then finally the flower, it takes time. And that's, as much as we try to hurry, and it's hard in this society now that we have so much that we can get immediate results from, we can't always push immediate results from the human body. Metabolic repair happens gradually at the cellular level. Blood sugar, insulin sensitivity, and fat distribution change before the scale actually does. And faster results don't often last. And that's a really important fact. I want to keep reiterating that weight cycling or this up and down, on, off is detrimental in the long run because, again, it worsens metabolic health. So slow does not mean it's failing. It means that the body is adapting and stabilizing. And lasting support is built through steady, supported change, not urgency. So when we stop chasing weight, we are actually able to improve health for the long term. We're able to when we focus on lifestyle as a target, and I will say that there are so many studies that demonstrate this, when we focus on weight, the change is not lasting. So we may see changes in the short term, but it doesn't last because we're not able to sustain it. But when we focus on changing the lifestyle factors and these other factors that we talk about, regulating our nervous system, excuse me, making sure that we feel safe, making sure that we're nourishing our body, that we're sleeping well. When we do focus on these things, this is where we see the change. Um, we will see improved insulin sensitivity. We see lower fasting glucose and lower A1C over time, reduced visceral fat, better energy, less cravings, better sleep. So weight often will follow after those things, but it's not the only win and it's not the primary target. And again, looking at the blue zones, when we look at the blue zones, they're following just living life in simple, sustainable ways. And granted, it would be lovely to live in somewhere where there's low stress, low everything. But I think we can take a lot of lessons from there. It's the simplicity of living that really is powerful and that focus on really the quality of life, quality of relationships, quality of the food and the flavor. And these things are really where the power is. Movement built into daily life, strong social bonds and purpose. These are all really important. A slower pace and more joy. So that was a lot. I'm going to talk about the joyful medicine method. This is my take on lifestyle medicine. So lifestyle medicine is an evidence-based specialty that focuses on using, six pillars: food, movement, stress management, connection, sleep, movement, avoidance of risky substances. And these things are really able to lower risk of disease. They can manage disease and even reverse disease, things like everything from heart disease to diabetes, obviously, to autoimmune disease, and the list goes on. But as I mentioned earlier, sometimes we apply these principles as rigidly as we apply everything else, and life is about living. So the joyful medicine method is my answer to this. It's really a framework for metabolic healing that focus on evidence-based lifestyle medicine, nervous system support, joy and connection, and real life sustainability. So really looking at we can how we can incorporate this into real life and honor our culture and our life and our humanity. And it's the difference between knowing and changing. So a lot of times we know that these things work, but how, again, do we do it? And this is really where the power is. So some simple things that you can start doing today, which I mentioned, that I would give you some simple, straightforward things to start. So it's really about starting small and kind of building consistently forward. The first thing is I always talk about fiber, not looking at protein or carbs or anything like that, but really looking at the color of the food on your plate, including more color, focusing on including more plant foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, nuts, and seeds. That's where the power is. I'm not focusing on so much on elimination, because when you start to fill your plate, overflow it with these fiber-rich foods, we start to improve, stabilize glucose spikes, improve insulin sensitivity, lower inflammation, improve your gut health, really help you feel full longer. So you're eating maybe the same or even less, sometimes more, because plant foods are less calorie dense, and you're feeling more satisfied. And it starts to help your body start to heal. So again, focusing on fiber-rich foods. Simple, just add more fiber. Walking after meals. So often we're overwhelmed with the amount of exercise to do. So yes, there are recommendations for the amount of exercise, but believe it or not, just 10 minutes after meals can help lower blood sugar and lower that post-meal blood sugar spike. Protect your sleep like it's medicine. Sleep is medicine. That is one of the things that we often feel like, oh, I can catch up later, but our body is really keeping score. Again, it's another stressor. 7 to 9 hours a night at a minimum. And having like a wind down routine is really helpful. I know sometimes sleep can be hard, but really letting your body know every night at this time is time to bed. Another big thing that I think we don't think about enough is blue light. It affects our circadian rhythm. It affects our melatonin secretion. So really making sure that we're not using those phones or even watching TV at least an hour before bed. And then things that make it sustainable. So connecting with loved ones, really focusing on the quality of those connections. Maybe we're always busy and rushing. I know my schedule can be crazy sometimes, but making sure that those connections are really meaningful. When we're connected, it lowers stress, it lowers cortisol, and it helps protect our metabolic health. even a quick call that's undistracted, a meal together, a hug. Hugs are medicine. Creating a joy break. This is my little answer to mindfulness. So just a few moments, brief moments of joy calm the nervous system and support healing. I like to say, savor the joy snacks, savor those moments, whether it's, looking at a flower or listening quietly to a piece of music. Maybe it's just a quiet walk in nature or a few deep breaths. Whatever it is, 10 minutes can make it really makes a difference, right? Dance, laugh, sit in nature, whatever it is, enjoy quiet time. It's not extra, it really is essential. It's one thing that can help reset our nervous system, bring us out of that fight or flight into calm and restorative mode. And adopt a healing mindset. How we feel about our health is almost as important as the steps that we take. Recognizing that it's progress over perfection, flexibility over rigidity, consistency over control, and healing works when it really fits real life. So thinking about not, forcing a move, but really thinking about how can I create this rhythm in my life that includes these healing things. So why this works, it really targets the metabolic drivers, again, above weight. That's really the key. It supports the nervous system so that the change sticks when our nervous system is calm and supported. It makes these decisions sustainable. It makes us better able to make the choices, but also it makes it stick. Building consistency without rigidity or shame is where the power is. And this is why people stop cycling and start healing. You know that it's okay to allow life to happen, right? Because you have a pattern that supports and a rhythm around these habits. So I kind of summarized what is possible. I gave you an overview of the physiology behind it, why nervous system and stress are really important, kind of a few steps that you can start taking today. If you're looking for an approach, if this is something that sounds like it would work for you or something that you've been looking for, because that's often what people tell me is that they've been looking for something that honors their experience, their life, and is not just reducing them to numbers. If this is something that you're interested in, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my program. You don't need more information. You really need action, right? The action is where the key is. Understanding is one thing, but putting it into motion is another. So the Joyful Metabolic Reset is my response. My program is a 12-week physician-led program. It's focused on improving insulin sensitivity. Again, not focusing on weight or numbers, really getting at that underlying cause, working towards lowering hemoglobin A1C sustainably, reducing reliance on medications when appropriate, and building habits that fit real life. So again, that they are sustainable, that you carry forward forever. And so this is the kind of the structure of how the program goes. There's educational modules that we kind of go through week by week together. The first 3 weeks are focused on creating a supportive environment for change, really laying the foundation, improving our daily rhythms, and focusing on increasing that food quality, being more aware of stress so that our bodies are more supported and ready and open for change. Weeks 4 and 5 delve much deeper into this weight-centered focus that we have all grown up with. And unlearning these rules are really important so that we can break out of this diet cycling and break the metabolic stress. Weeks 6 and 7 focus on just connecting all the pieces again, understanding how our food quality and food timing and all of these components, the types of foods that we eat and how they affect insulin signaling, energy use, and fat storage without tracking or restriction. And 8 through 10 is applying all those other lifestyle pillars and really working on including them in our day. Weeks 11 to 12 are about making it last. It's that sustainability that where the key is. So this is built-in support and real experiences. Really, you're not doing it alone. It's coaching and accountability throughout, simple weekly targets, feedback and adjustment, and then there's a community support along with it. So what's included is 12 weeks of expert evidence-based guidance, 3 private coaching calls just to tailor it to your specific situation, weekly group questions and answers and accountability and clarity, There's some progress tracking tools. Again, I don't like to track too much, but sometimes it's good to see where we came from, where we're going, and just check in periodically just to help stay on course. And then a community that helps support you throughout. And it's really focused on abundance, not restriction. Community support goes for an entire year after the program's over. So the value of what you get is a physician-led guidance. It's a structured path, not a diet. No diet plans or restrictions. Nervous system and lifestyle integration support that's designed for sustainability. And the year of community support, which is really, I think, important. That when we talk about lifestyle change, often we've had these patterns for decades, right? For our whole lives, even. And so when making the change, um, implementing it and maintaining it for the long term is important. And having people that are doing it alongside with you and supporting you is important as well, so that you don't feel like you're out there on your own. So the Joyful Metabolic Reset is 1997. It's a high-touch physician-led program designed to improve metabolic health and support reducing or avoiding medications when appropriate. And if you're ready for a supported, sustainable approach, this is absolutely it. Many women that have done this program before have had amazing results. I mean, everybody's had amazing results, different results. Many people notice blood sugar changes right within the first couple of weeks. Weight loss without dieting. And that's one thing I hear again and again and again. They're like, the people tell me that they can't believe that they're not focusing on calorie counting and they're able to lose weight. More energy and hope, confidence, that this is really doable. It's not something that's elusive like often it has felt before. So these are some of the messages I've gotten over time. One lady she was pre-diabetic, and that was why she joined the program. Her doctor was saying that she needed to go on medication, or she would have to go on medication with the next visit if there wasn't a change. And so she was able to come out of the pre-diabetic range. Another lady who was doing the program, her husband was eating what she was eating, and he was actually supposed to go on medication as well, but he lost weight, and his doctor was decided to follow on. So that was pretty great. She was already surprised that she was losing weight, but he was really surprised that he lost weight. So that was great. Another lady was able to come off metformin, and she had been struggling for years. She had been following all the low carb, no fruit, all these things that she had never been able to eat over the years of her diagnosis. And, with this program, learning how to eat foods that support her, she was able to, have her metformin stop, which was wonderful. Another person at the beginning of the program, just within those first couple of weeks, changing what he was eating, actually helped with his blood sugar coming down within just a few days. And this is just somebody realizing that eating more fruits and vegetables really made a big difference, and initially feeling like it was eating things that she wasn't supposed to eat in the past. By eating them, she actually was starting to feel better. And this is most recently, I just got messaged, this is this week, last week, I guess it is, where her A1C went from 7 to 6.2. It's another person had been on medication and actually had just had increasing medication every year and was really, really frustrated, having to add more and more. And so was able to come down significantly. And I think we'll be weaning medication soon. And this is just somebody feeling more confident in how she's eating and overall how she's feeling, and more positive after feeling so much shame and guilt over the years. So, some of the worries that people sometimes bring up is maybe that they've tried things before. But again, this is a different target. Again, we're not targeting weight or macros or calories. It's really targeting the underlying cause and the additional support. Maybe feeling overwhelmed, but this program again focuses on small, consistent steps, not a big change all at once. It's really supporting your body and change, and seeing how you feel, and having some structure and focus. Some people may feel like they're going to fall off track, but again, we give accountability every step of the way, and plans to help you stay on track. And then wanting it to last, right? And that's really the goal of this program. That's one of the main reasons why I made it, is to have something that is not a quick fix or a diet or, a rigid program. It's really, again, built for life and, continuing for the long term. So my commitment is, if you do the program, my commitment is really to support you and and uh, follow you all the way through. It's not just a plan that I hand you and then I go away. I guide you every step of the way throughout the few 12 weeks, and then again, ongoing throughout the community for the year. There's coaching and support and culinary strategy. Again, I told you I love to cook, love to help people make meals a little bit healthier and enjoyable is really the key. Flavor is medicine. Again, it's not on a diet, it's a way of living that supports healing. So enrollment is open. The next cohort starts on March 3rd. So enrollment will be open, through the week. If you're ready to join, just join us now. If not, I'll be sending out the replay so you can watch again. And the quicker you decide, the better, the faster you can get started. So this is the link. I'll be also sending it out, joyfulmediциnemethod.com/metabolic reset. So if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. I'll stop the recording.